got to London, didn't have a family doctor, had this gynae issue. And basically, of course, when you have a gynae issue, it's either like, well, you have an STI or you're pregnant. Like there's no in between, right? Like it's one or the other. And that's kind of even, you know, coming from a, you know, health focused background with my family, I still felt that way. And here I am, like, you know, a pretty confident young person on the radio, pretty open about my entire life to all these people. And yet I was nervous because I had this issue and it was really affecting me. I was so embarrassed to even talk about it. And it became something that, you know, ended up being, you know, a little bit more serious and that can happen. Like I've had friends who have had operations and all these kind of things, but we just never talk about it because if it's a gynae issue, you know, that's like forbidden. And again, right. And not that again, I'm going to like scream it on the sidewalk, but I realized that even if I was feeling this way and kind of the shame and stigma I was feeling around it just being, you know, on my vagina, basically, I thought that's interesting because I'm sure there's obviously other people that feel the same way. So we obviously started with a focus more on health education, but menstruation kind of obviously like period sweater was like the first thing I ever sold. But now I've kind of transitioned into more like really the passion behind Here for Her is you know, health education and promoting health education, and that all folks deserve compassionate healthcare. Menstrual equity, I mean, there's many different ways to describe it, but I find the easiest way to describe it is the disproportionate amount that menstruation affects those who menstruate compared to those who do not. So when you menstruate, you have added, and you know, everyone's, you know, menstruation experience, period experience is different. But typically you'll have added anxiety, added stress due to situational things. You may have, you know, symptoms, physical symptoms, and then also there's the financial burden. According to some research by Planned Canada, there are a couple different pieces, but it's all starting to just be done now because this is like a newer thing coming up finally, is that like we spend around $8,000 on menstrual products in a lifetime when you menstruate. Again, that's like having privilege to be able to afford it, right? So menstruation is a health issue and it's also an equity issue. So when we speak to the health issue, this is obviously something we can't control. So when we go into a public washroom, we know that like biological things are going to happen and there's going to be toilet paper there for us to use, right? We know that. But we could be on our period. And again, I say we, meaning a person who menstruates, and obviously not all women menstruate and not all people who menstruate identify as being a woman. So that's a clear thing to say as well. But when I personally, because I menstruate, when I go into a washroom, like there's not going to be products for me. So even though like I can't control that I menstruate, I was born this way, I'm going to have to figure it out for myself, which is like, to me, absolutely ridiculous because we don't do that with toilet paper. So I always compare and have been taught to compare toilet paper to menstrual products because they're no different. Because people always think folks are going to steal menstrual products if they're provided, like, oh, they're going to take 50 at a time. And like, I'm telling you right now, if they do, then that reinforces that we have an issue we need to deal with because toilet paper is not stolen, and yet I'm sure it is from time to time.
Absolutely.
Right? But we don't worry about it.
Right?
Exactly. Like if you don't have anything to use, you're going to take toilet rolls if you can.
Because you don't have access to it in another 100%. Way, right? It's
desperation side of it. Then there's the equity piece that kind of translates over, and think about it at school. So say, you know, you're a guardian and you're just making ends meet, and this month, like you can't afford to buy your child a bunch of pads or tampons. Like it's just not going to happen. So that student is going to miss school entirely, or, you know, not make it for band practice or miss a quiz, whatever, because if they don't have a product, they're not going to school, obviously. No. So that is where the equity issue comes in. And like, that's such a strong case at schools to implement this. And I get like so heated about it because obviously Thames Valley District School Board's been doing this for 2 years, which is amazing. And they've extended their pilot to now where it's just like all high schools just provide menstrual products, which is fantastic. And like every school needs to be doing that because the amount of kids that miss school or are absent from things because of menstruation is massive. I'm like, oh man, like if employers don't see that as a productivity issue, like I don't know what will help convince them. Like, you know, like that's a massive statistic when a lot of your workforce, you know, being women or people who menstruate, like why wouldn't you implement so that, you know, it's a level playing field in terms of opportunity, in terms of compassion, in terms of empathy. Like, and some employers have, like, I know a couple employers recently in the past, like 5 months, big employers did implement menstruation days, or like product in the washroom. And like product in the washroom is a given, but menstruation days is also really cool. Like when I was in grade 11 or 12, we were told there were tampons and pads in the front office. Like that shows you how, and that still was going on when I implemented with some folks at Thames Valley, what 2 years ago, not even. That was still a mentality. Like, if you need something, just go to the front office. No, like, talk about shame. Like, that's like the most embarrassing thing I could think of. For me right now, no, but for me in high school, in my early 20s, yes. I would never do that. Like, I still hid my tampon and pads, you know, in my pocket, under my bra, anywhere in university.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, Shauna and I have talked before about, you know, there was those ones that came out where the handle folded in so that you could, and that was the whole marketing thing.
That was the point.
No one will ever know.
How are we normalizing when we still think it's like okay that kids are just going to be comfortable going to the front office and asking someone, an admin person, or like the principal or somebody there for a tampon? Like, what? Like, there's a whole 10,000 steps in between those two that we need to be working on. And the stigma piece is and the shame is massive, because there's so many layers. Like, if you're a guardian trying to afford even just food on the table, and you're going to the food bank, which is the reality, and you can chat with the London Food Bank in particular, they're like, menstrual products are one of the most highly requested items, and they always need more. And like, imagine you're going in there and you're like, I need this, I need that. And then let alone maybe your one child doesn't use tampons, and like, oh, you're only given certain types of applicators. Like, there's just so many levels of it that if we're not even comfortable talking about menstruation, how the hell are we ever going to, make policy change and all these things? Talk about menstruation in your networks. So with your friends, with your colleagues, with your peers at school, whoever is in your network, like, actually sit down and talk about menstruation and how it has either affected you or affected people you're close with. Because once that comes out, there will be a lot of stories there and a lot of interesting perspectives. And I think that's important. And then, if you are in a leadership position at work, if you're a teacher at school, whatever, that looks like for you, make change where you can. So like, bring this up to people at your workplace. And if you need somebody like me to come in, message me, like, I'll come in and do a presentation, like whatever you need to understand more, learn from other people in this space. And again, if you need, like, I can help you be connected with people the best I can in your area, kind of, that are doing this work. And then it kind of goes to pressuring MPs and counselors in your area. Like, call them, email them, set up calls with them, create a group where it's like a menstrual equity, group where we chat together with the counselor and the MP and let them know why this is important. Like, I think that's also a big piece too, because I kind of see this as like a domino effect. Schools aren't going to want to be the last schools to do this, universities included, and workplaces aren't going to want to be the last ones to do this, but they're not going to be the first. Like, there's not enough people in this space, like, doing this type of work, and there's not enough diversity in this space doing this type of work. And that's something where, with kind of this like idea of like an alliance, or like somehow we're getting together, that's what I'm trying to achieve with that, because I know there are folks with different cultures and backgrounds doing amazing work, and we just aren't amplifying their voices enough. And that's something that I'm trying to achieve with getting everybody together. And I'm kind of getting there. I'm slowly making my way with the people I know, and then hopefully we can, extend out and get more people to join. Because that is one thing that we've realized in this space also, that like, we're still like trying to get, tampons and pads and people to understand that this isn't something shameful that we should hide. And let alone, there's other cultures that embrace it. And then there's other times where it's the opposite. And, and they don't even have what we have yet, of course, in other places around the world. So I think like, that's why this space needs to be disrupted so much more. And there needs to be more people explaining from their perspective. So I would just say, like, if you know someone in this space that has, stories to tell and wants to chat about it, like, connect them with me, with anyone, with everyone, because I'm one experience and I am coming definitely from a education policy change perspective, but there's so much room in this space for change and for education. And we need to be hearing about all how menstruation is, you know, chatted about, treated in all cultures. And I think that just makes such a beautiful picture for, again, reducing stigma.